consumer environmental protection work that the office has done. So we have a number of trust accounts that's out in addition to the budget that we get from the board. So I matched it so that we could have, instead of having one inspector, we now have two inspectors. We had two deputy district attorneys that were assigned to that unit. And obviously, one of the things they're looking at is who is who's running this, right? Who is pulling the demand and creating the demand for that? So I'm sure they will be addressing catalytic converters. Auto theft is a big piece of it. And even though it's called retail theft, and we haven't branded ours yet, every office has the opportunity to call it something else. Our team has they just got training like a week and a half ago. But we got some folks on it that are very experienced in this area that have done this before. And there's a lot of law enforcement collaboration that is about to happen. In Alameda County, Fremont received, the police department got $2.5 million from the governor's fund, and Newark got about $1 million. So, and we're not limited to working with them, because we have been reaching out to retailers like Whole Foods and Target and trying to bring people together to hear what their experience has been, as well as small businesses. So we're very focused on that and really excited about the opportunity to get in the game on it, because we haven't been there. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Speaking of organized retail theft, the limit for misdemeanors is now $950. Have you worked with state legislators, or would you support reducing that limit to substantially less than $950?
I have not worked with state legislatures, and I cannot tell you that I will. Let me be clear. The misdemeanor limit that you're referring to is for particular types of theft offenses. Most of the misdemeanors that we prosecute are, to the extent that we prosecute them, are not theft offenses. There is the one type of theft that you're referring to where it's under $950, that's considered petty theft. Typically, when it becomes, you get over that limit, is where you have somebody that's recurring, and so you can look at what I'm familiar with. There's a charge that's called petty theft with a prior that takes it beyond the 950 thing. So it's basically, and it's not that there's no consequence for petty theft, because there is. If you are typically, what will happen, law enforcement will cite what they call cite and release, and the chief is here. He can talk about that, how people get cited if the amount of the value of the amount that they stole is less than that amount, doesn't meet the threshold. Typically, they'll be cited and released, but this citation is enforceable at some point. There will be a reckoning day. What we are trying to do in Alameda County, from our perspective, is to expand the use of our collaborative courts to determine if the person has been cited for this particular type of crime, what is the reason for the crime, if there be one, and how do we make sure that they don't do it again? Because that's the thing, you want to prevent people from being repeat offenders and going back and keep going back over and over again. Yes, sir.
Any more questions? Oh, well.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I know you know about the young man who was the unarmed security guard at Home Depot in Pleasanton, who was shot point blank by a perpetrator and subsequently was chased into Oakland and found. Can you give me the status of this perpetrator's physical location? By that I mean in or out of jail, and what the district attorney's office plan is for the potential further prosecution.
Sure. I can't give you the status, but I can speculate that that person is in Santa Rita County Jail. I have no reason to believe. Well, let me back up. California has bail. And I'm not a fan of bail, probably for different reasons than you are, but than some of you are. But what I have seen is that people that are a danger to public safety are able to post bail and go out and commit another crime. I think that should be fixed. In my office, we are trying to fix that. But bail is not always up to us. It's really never up to us. We can say, but the judge gets to decide. As far as I know, and I wouldn't know specifically, I would have to defer to Chief Bruce to do the actual research, because I don't know if that person was able to bail out or if she's on a no bail hold. If she's on a no bail hold, then I presume she's gonna be in Santa Rita County Jail. So that's the incarceration piece. In terms of what the prosecution is, my understanding is that there were multiple charges leveled against that person. I do believe obviously there is a homicide charge. And I do believe that there's a gun enhancement charge on that case, but we can find out specifically. I can have Chief Bruce look at that. I mean, we prosecute people for homicides, trust me. We charge people who kill other people. We prosecute them. We expect that if you use a gun in Alameda County and you hurt someone, that you're gonna be held accountable. And so we have 7 locations at which we charge people. And we see, unfortunately, some pretty serious violent crimes in Alameda County, all over the county. One of the issues I was raising this morning with one of my deputies is that it would be interesting for us to learn. We are just, a lot of the data collections and things that we have questions about, the data has not been maintained or tracked in the way that we want to see it. So one of the points is I said, I want to know how many cases we charge out of Oakland versus Fremont versus, Union City. We don't see that data on a regular basis, and for us to go into the system, it will require a lot of support from ITD. So what I can tell you is that unfortunately, our county has been overrun even since 2021. And that's where I can see the first reports. It started in the pandemic and it just increased in 2021. The number of guns that came into this county just increased exponentially. And when people have guns, typically they use them. If they're going to commit a crime, they use them. And so it is a challenge. One of the hardest challenges that I face as a district attorney is how do I address crime and holding people accountable where everybody who we see has a gun. And so many people that we see don't have guns. Access to guns is a major issue for this county. I was fortunate a couple of weeks ago to host a gun violence prevention roundtable where I asked all the chiefs of police to come together. I brought in people from the Brady campaign, from public health, Alameda County Public Health, from Moms Demand Action, as well as a young woman who survived, a domestic violence survivor who survived being shot 5 times. The level of violence in this county is unacceptable. And unfortunately, it has been growing at an exponential rate, pretty much during the pandemic and then after the pandemic. They say it went down in the pandemic, now it's just back up and it's off the charts. And so we are working in a system that is overwhelmed in many ways. Our office, when we got there, just finding that the office was so understaffed meant that we weren't providing the services that this county needed to be able to prosecute people in a timely manner, to really have the opportunity to look at the cases and evaluate the evidence. Our charging deputies, if I didn't say this, we have 35 charging deputies. Every day they have to they have to look at probably hundreds of cases, most of them misdemeanors. But then, they know they need to focus on the serious violent crimes because that's the expectation. In those 35 deputies, they'll have to have time to look at each case. They got to make decisions about what the charges should be. Their decision by law is supposed to be based on what they believe they can prove beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's a hard call at the beginning of a case because you don't have all the evidence. And what we have found is that over the years, there's been, because we don't have, and Chief Bruce has been a major commenter on this. We don't have vertical prosecution in this county. So one person charges it. They may be rushed. They may not know what they're doing. They have not had adequate training in years. They don't talk to each other. And so they make a charging decision. And then the case goes away. It goes to arraignment and another deputy looks at it. That person is also looking at hundreds of cases. They don't have the time to evaluate the case and see, is this something that we can actually prove beyond a reasonable doubt? Did we charge the right thing? I have seen cases where I've said, why didn't we charge this? Well, nobody thought to charge it. Or why did we charge this when you knew you could not prove it beyond a reasonable doubt? So we're doing a lot of assessment and correcting and dealing with a backlog, no question about it. The misdemeanor backlog in Oakland is huge. The backlog at Echo J, East County Hall of Justice, is not as significant, but it is. The Fremont backlog of the deputy, the branch head of Fremont showed me a wall of misdemeanor cases that had not been cleared for many, many, many years. And the first time I went out there and he asked me, can I, with your permission, can I take these cases? Can I close them? Because a misdemeanor statute is 1 year. And he had cases from 2015. Yes, sir.
First off, thank you, Pamela, for coming here and speaking to us here in our little bubble town Pleasanton. I have a question to ask you. You ran on your campaign on being light on enforcement and not having enhancements. So I was just wondering, is there a precedence that you could point to that made you decide to run on that? And do you have any measurable success that by implementing that after being a DA and not using the enhancements, that it's actually working and how it's helping the people that are, the crimes are against and the victims?
So I didn't run on a platform of not using enhancements. And in fact, we are using enhancements. I can't tell you how successful my policies have been because it's 10 months. We haven't gotten to a year. But I can tell you, for instance, yesterday, Chief Bruce and I charged 2 cases with gun enhancements, which adds 20 years to a 25-year to life sentence. So we are using enhancements every day. It is not a fun task. I don't like to send people to jail forever because when I send somebody who's 40, 45 years to jail for 75 years, I know they're not coming home. And in California, we don't have the death penalty. Now, that's what I ran on. I will not impose a death penalty because I do believe in second chances and I do believe in rehabilitation. I've seen it. I'm a product of it. And so I ran on a platform of justice with compassion. And it was compassion not only for the people who have been harmed, but for people who have caused harm. It's a 360-degree view. My policies with respect to how we sentence and how we evaluate charging is based on the evidence and the research that has been done. In March of this year, the Council on Criminal Justice issued a report on long sentences, which covered enhancement. It was a national study, was commissioned by the Department of Justice. One of my sheroes, former U.S. Attorney Sally Yates, chaired that panel, and they looked across the board at the benefits and the detriments of long sentences. And they concluded, they made actually 10 recommendations, some of which we've highlighted in our social media, but there is no real evidence that long sentences actually deters crime. And what there is evidence that longer sentences, one, force us to take care of people longer, which means we have to invest, for California, we have to invest in prisons instead of education and mental health support. Longer sentences have proved to be racially disparate. And under the Racial Justice Act, which the legislature passed, there's a whole series of remedial steps that have to be taken to address the racial disparities. For instance, in Alameda County, when you look at UCLA's Center for the Study of Women issued a report in late 2022, where they found that of the young people under the age of 21, well, of all the people in California from Alameda County who were sentenced to life without the possibility of parole when they were under age 21, 82% of those were Black. Yeah, the data is pretty, the statewide average of sentencing for Black people of life without the possibility of parole is about 35%. In Alameda County, it's 71%. So we are double the statewide average. And that is the history and the features of this criminal justice system that we are having to address. By passing the Racial Justice Act, the legislature said that we are mandated. Anyone who believes that their sentence, and the Racial Justice Act includes not only my deputies and what I do, it includes what Chief does and what his deputies do. It covers the entire process from tracking, from arrest to charging, to prosecution, to sentencing. If a person can prove by a preponderance of the evidence, not beyond a reasonable doubt, by a preponderance of the evidence that some part of their commitment was infected with racial bias, they are entitled to relief, whether that is a reduced sentence or being released for however much time they've served. This year, starting January 1, only certain people were entitled to file those petitions. People who were facing the death penalty or had life without the possibility of parole sentences. In Alameda County, we have about 2,500 people that are eligible to file these petitions. Starting January 1, 2024, anyone with a felony conviction out of Alameda County that can prove that his or her conviction was somehow tainted with racial bias is entitled to relief. And my office has to respond to all of those petitions. So we created a Racial Justice Act unit so we can get ready for that. We've only had about 20 cases this year that we've had to respond to. But as I said, we have 2,500 people who are eligible to bring those cases. Yes, sir. Oh, well, let me finish. In 2017, the California legislature first held a study or did a study of all enhancements and sentencing in California. And that hadn't been done since like the 1960s. Former Governor Jerry Brown testified that in his view, we need to get rid of all enhancements. There are over 200 enhancements. And so the commission also made recommendations that prosecutors are bound to at least follow, judges are mandated to follow with respect to sentencing and enhancements. Yes, sir.
Thank you for coming. I was reading about what happened in the tragedy in Maine, how family members of the perpetrator went to the local sheriff, and they asked for help, and the sheriff's office did what they felt they could, and there was some referrals, but obviously there wasn't sufficient coordination. And Maine apparently has a yellow flag law, which is kind of a compromise of our red flag law, which allows for some police intervention in this situation. And I just wanted to get your perspective on what we're doing to prevent such a tragedy happening here. If a family member is able to come forward, or somebody's able to come forward and say that they know somebody who is at risk of really going off.
We're living on borrowed time, my friend. The safety net for mental health in this county, as much of the state, has a huge hole in it. That's one of the reasons I created the Mental Health Commission, because and there are stories like that I've read before I was elected in New York and around the country. You see people who were not able to get the help that they needed. The family was not able to get the help that they needed, and it resulted in a bigger tragedy, a huge problem for the community. That's why I'm pushing my push in Alameda County is we've got to deal with the guns. Because we cannot, everybody has access to a gun. Whether, and we're trying to figure out, what we found in this county, we don't have an effective way to provide gun violence restraining orders to family members. They used to do it at the Family Justice Center through the Family Violence Law Center. They don't do it anymore. If you have a family member that you believe is at risk, and you may not think of them as dangerous, but you may, the test for 5150, a danger to themselves or others. If you have that suspicion and you think, I need to make sure that they don't have access to a gun, there's there's no actual resources for you to get that done. You can't go to chief and say, I need a gun violence restraining order. He's not going to get it for you. There's a self-help clinic that I'm told, I think it meets limited hours through the court, but we're not providing that. So we have a lot of work to do, and focusing on where do we make sure that people are falling through the holes, how do we plug those holes as much as we can? That's one of the reasons why we really focused on expanding and investing in the collaborative courts. At the very outset, when I arrived in January, there was one person assigned to 14 courts. 10 of our collaborative courts require a mental health diagnosis to even be eligible. So we changed the eligibility criteria to expand it so that our deputies, if they thought someone had a mental health issue, that they would send them to that court to be evaluated. That was the first thing. I also hired a mental health clinician to staff that court so that we could get some real, quality assessments of people, as well as sending over. We now are up to 8 lawyers assigned to that court. We've added a drug court because a lot of times drug courts are where you catch people. I'm under a great deal of requests to establish a dual diagnosis court. But we see them after the fact. It's after the fact. And so, I probably, like many of you, before I was elected, after I was elected, I said, where is behavioral health in Alameda County? Because that is who has responsibility to make sure that we have community-based resources and outreach being done and support for families. And we're still trying to plug that hole.
One more question.
Okay.
One more question.
Of course.
And question about what we see on the internet and Instagram, the other things. There's a whole lot of these sideshows that go on that happen. We see the marks on the freeways. It's kind of like it's unruliness that's going on in general. That along with smash and grabs or the just seeing many of us don't even want to travel through Oakland, go to Oakland, go into that side of Alameda. Because it really is, when you park our cars, like you're going to get caught, and it's a high chance of it. I've had a couple situations with my own company and my own company employees in the community, in nice communities all over our county. But the feeling of safety, the feeling of we feel to leave our cars in the lot and leave them there. What's going to be done about it? I know it's trying to problem it happens so quick. But those create those safe results that we're hopefully protecting their rights and feeling safety in our community.
I never thought I'd have to come to Pleasanton and say this, but I'm not the mayor of Oakland. I have to tell people in Oakland that all the time. I'm not your mayor. Well, you mentioned Oakland. I met with the Oakland Chamber and I told them I'm not the mayor of Oakland. It is a time and a season when many people do not feel safe. And there are times that I don't feel safe, but most of the time I do. I just roll like that. My car, some of you may have heard, was broken into recently. It's not the first time my car was broken into. My car was broken into in Oakland in the early 2000s. I was inside my office one night and somebody broke the glass window and came into my office while I was in the office. And that was 2000, I don't know. we are living in a time, no question, that things that used to not happen with any regularity or consistent, or that you thought was unusual, have become regular. Unfortunately, as a citizen, a resident of Oakland, I recall being very concerned starting before the pandemic, in 2017, when we started having the increase in homelessness. I called them favelas because the numbers of people that became homeless, which in part is going to drive crimes of opportunity, crimes of survival. The number of people that are obviously going to experience drug addiction has risen. We have a fentanyl crisis, which is frightening, and we haven't even talked about that. But we have a lot of social problems that typically are what drives crime in a community. And as I just said to the gentleman, I see it after the fact. And so what we need to do is go upstream and figure out why they're falling in, and figure out what can we do to divert people, to interrupt certainly the low level types of crimes that we see, whether that's getting juveniles in programs and, motivating them to do something other than try to go through town doing sideshows and doing dangerous things. We all know, though, and science has shown, before the age of 26, young people make terrible choices. It's just in their brain. They're not, and if I'm a mother, if you raise kids, because when they reach 18, they're not ready. Okay, they are not ready. So we know that our young people still need a lot of guidance, and a lot of times they're not getting that. The harm to our educational system through the pandemic, I think that we're still feeling the effects of that. We know the harms to our businesses, and some of us were able to really come through the pandemic. And I used to go in businesses and say, if you survived the pandemic, you survived the pandemic. That was a feat, right? So many people did not survive the pandemic. And so we got a lot of realignment and a lot of readjustment that we have to do. I don't know how to make people feel safe in the midst of this. I think we all have to find our way through and just know that it's not the end. This is not the first time we've been in this situation. Hopefully it'll be the last time, because as we know better, hopefully we'll do better. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Really appreciate your time and thoughts. And you've got your whole team. I appreciate them being here too. Thank you for being here. And I did unfortunately forget to introduce Eric Martin for our inspiration. And due to the comments we heard tonight, we've got some big challenges ahead for not only our city, our county, and our country, but Eric's going to make it all feel much better with his inspiration. So that sets you up, didn't it?
No pressure. What I did is when I knew I was going to be doing this, I just pulled a little one of these sayings for the day off of our dress or the counter in our bathroom, and I just thought each day I try to look. Okay, let's see if I can get through this without too much grief. Actually, Pamela, I wanted to thank you for all you do and your whole department. And one thing I was just looking through as you were talking, and I saw focus on progress, not perfection. And we thank you for the progress that you're making and working on for all of us. That just came to mind. One of the others was nurture your mind with great thoughts, for you will never go any higher than you think. This one spoke to me. Once she stopped rushing through life, she was amazed how much more life she had time for. And I don't know about, I think all of us, we have so much going on these days that it's so easy to get caught up in life and not kind of smell the roses, if you will. And then I'll leave you with two last ones. If the plan doesn't work, change the plan, not the goal. I liked that saying. And I'll leave you with this. today's affirmation. I am in charge of how I feel, and today I am choosing happiness.
Well done. Appreciate it. Okay, just a couple more items before we adjourn our meeting. There's a couple events that we have coming up that I can't see until I put my glasses on. First, I'd like to remind everybody on November 4th, there is still openings for the Kids Against Hunger. That's the food stuffing party that well, it's actually a party. It's a lot of fun. There's still 33 spots. I'm sorry, 17 spots open. There's 50 spots. We've got 33 filled. That's from 10 to 11:30 on November 4th. I sent an email out how to register. So is Jake as well. So let Jake or I know if you have any further questions. We really want to fill that up. Next week, we have an amazing speaker, Willie Sharp, decorated USA Naval Aviator, retired, is going to talk about his experiences when he was fighting for our country. And then on November 16th is our TTT, which stands for Third Thirsty Thursday. And that will be at Sidetrack Bar and Grill. And then, of course, to end out the year, we're having a fantastic holiday Christmas party at my home with my wife, and we're gonna have a lot of fun. So hopefully you can come to that on December 14th, starting at 5 o'clock. So let's move to the opportunity drawing. Everybody got their tickets handy? First winner is 047. How much money do we have in the kitty? $90. All right. Oh, Jim just came back. Come on, Jim. Let's get you, instead of me going all over there. Yeah. You want to? Yeah. Thank you, Audrey. Okay. That was quick. Yeah, of course. This is a opportunity drawing. 057. 057. 057. Is there 057 anywhere? No? Oh, okay. We'll try again. Going once. Oh, there we go, John, our guest. John, come over. So, John, you got to pick the red poker chip to win the money. Yes. And if you win, you have to become a member. Oh, okay. No, okay. All right. Just give that back to us. Okay. That's it. Thank you so much. And let's see, is there anything else? Once again, thank all the visitors that came today. Thank you, Madam District Attorney. We really appreciate you being here and all the work that you're doing for our county. And we are officially adjourned.